Yeah,
Back to
so
you.
I had a few questions, I guess, just about the code you were using for
Mm-hmm.
the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I can ask that
Ask
now?
away. We're here for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm like not really familiar with JavaScript at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I was could kind of walk through that code again,
Okay.
if that's
So you
possible.
mean the code here, right?
Yes.
All right, I can walk through it again. What program languages
Thank
do you know?
Um, so I'm not really familiar, or like I'm not really like mastered or experienced
Mhm.
in any of this code, but like I'm like kind of familiar. Like I could code in HTML and CSS, but like basic, just like the basics.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to learn Python and Java.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
I know the
Is
schools
that
don't really teach JavaScript, so I know it's kind of different than what you might learn. Um, so JavaScript is syntax-wise, it's probably similar to um, Java more than Python,
Oh, okay.
meaning that in Java you have functions, you have semicolons and things.
Mhm.
But the philosophy on how you program is really like Python more. There's no like Python. There's no compiler. There's no. You don't need to use classes and all that type of thing. So it's a
Mhm.
good um, mix between. It's like halfway. It's like Python and Java combined in a way. So there's concepts in both that you can draw upon in doing JavaScript. Just put it that way.
Okay. Mhm.
So this when you're doing a front end JavaScript, and again, you're
Mhm.
writing code that works on people's browsers, you oftentimes need to write code to change what the user sees here in the browser. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right. Yeah, it does.
So are you comfortable with the concepts of variables and functions?
A little. Yeah.
Okay. So these things in green here are basically telling the browser what the thing next to it is. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that
Right,
does.
so this thing here is a function. I'm like teaching a computer how to do something using a
Mhm.
language it understands.
Mhm.
So I need to teach it the words I want it to understand, right? Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
So this thing here, I'm making up a word, just like I make up a word called $main, and I want it to be a constant. So that means I just want to put something in it and it will never ever change.
Okay.
Does
And
that
then
make
the
sense?
dollar sign, is that made up or is that like a syntax? Like, do we have to have the dollar sign in front?
No, you don't have to have the $sign at all. You can
Okay.
put pretty much anything you want, just as long as
Okay.
there's no spaces or like special characters.
Okay.
There's some special characters allowed, like $sign. The only reason I put a $sign there is not for the browser, but for me or whoever's reading the code. Because I use this $sign to tell people when they're looking at my code that, oh, this variable contains an element that you see in the page.
Oh, okay. So is that what the dollar sign is for? Like, is
Yeah,
that like conventional? Okay.
it's a convention, but you don't need to follow it.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So it just makes my code more readable to someone.
Mhm.
All right. Um,
And then really quickly, like, could
mhm.
you explain the document part? Like,
Yeah,
what's
I'll get
the
there.
purpose? Okay.
So the
Thank
thing
you.
in purple, the purple things here are variables that the browser already understands what they mean. I don't need to teach
Okay.
it now. So document
Okay.
is, what was that?
Oh yeah, I was just agreeing.
Okay. So document is the variable that contains everything you see here.
Mhm.
It contains everything here. And then I need just to find stuff in here. So query selector is just basically telling the browser to find something in here. So basically I'm asking the browser, go search the document for the main element, really. So in our body element, we had this main element down here, right here.
Right.
So basically it says, go find this thing and put it in this variable. Okay. Sort inputs, it's calling query selector all. So it's just not finding one thing, it's finding all of them. So this is saying find all the inputs with the name sort. So if I look down in my code, I have two of them. I have 1 and 2. So basically it's putting those two things in variables.
Okay.
And risk inputs is putting basically all these guys in variables. All these circles here. And the reason why I'm asking it to put these inputs into variables is so that I can detect when the user changes them. So the user is going to use these elements to do something to the page.
Okay.
Okay.
So question. So like what we have so far, the 3 lines, does it already store, like if we click on any of the input radios, like does it already store what we click, or is it just like finding them?
No, it actually stores it. It finds and stores it. That's what the equal sign is doing. The equal sign is telling the code to put whatever the output of this is into here.
And then I noticed how you have, I think, a comma in front of the sort input and risk input. Is that just like shorthand of writing const instead of like rewriting it?
Yeah, I can totally write it like this, constant. You know, everyone has different ways of doing this.
Right.
Whatever makes sense to you. You follow your own stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, like it totally makes sense to use the shorthand. Like just as a beginner, I feel like it helps like writing everything out, so I don't confuse myself in the process. But yeah.
Okay. That's fine. That's totally fine. It's all how you look at it. So if you want us to write it out, feel free to write it out, and I can do that in my workshops too, is to write those out. So thank you for that. Here, this next line here.
Thank you.
Is basically I'm creating a variable called data. And let here is telling the browser that this variable, what it goes inside of it, is going to change over time.
Okay.
So I'm going to be using this variable to put data in, take data out, some different data in, and things like that. So I'm just going to be swapping out what's in here. Okay. So I start out with nothing. It's just a place to put. What was that?
And we have to assign it.
Yeah, then we have to add the stuff later.
Okay, that makes sense.
And before I go into each of these functions, let me just finish this high level. I could go off the overview, and then we can go into the details.
Sure.
But this is basically these are functions that are going to do something that I'll talk about. And this async I'll talk about too. Let me get back down to the end of these functions. So here I basically defined everything and told the browser what all these special terms I made up mean. Now that I have data in these variables, I can do stuff to them. So this one here, since this is it has multiple things in here, right? Risk has 1, 2, 3, 7 things. I'm gonna take one thing out of it at a time. So there's 7 things in here. So this code here is going to run 7 times because there's 7 inputs. And this code is going to run 2 times because there's 2 sort inputs.
Okay.
So it's just basically a for loop. It's a shorthand way of doing a for loop.
Oh, okay.
So for each input inside of this, it kind of reads more like English in my mind. This arrow means do this.
All right.
So if I wrote this in English, it would be for every input inside my risk inputs, add an event listener to the input. So that means basically here it's saying, when I click this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
All that's saying is when I click this, do that. So, okay?
Yep.
All right, so basically when I call any of these guys, it's gonna call the filter function. And if I call any of these two guys, it's called the sort function, okay?
Okay.
And this last thing that's doing is it's just a function I've made up here called fetch data. And I'm just running it. By putting 2 parentheses after the function name, I can actually execute the code that's inside these curly braces.
Okay.
All right. So in here,
Okay.
I'm basically saying go fetch. So the browser knows what fetch means. It's a special term.
Oh, okay.
And just basically go fetch this file and put whatever you find in here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if I go over to my data.json here,
Mm-hmm.
basically fetching all this.
Okay.
And putting in there. And then I'm saying, then take all that data and convert it into what's called a JavaScript object notation. So it's basically saying, put all this data into, parse it, basically parse it so that it will see that this is a list. So let me show you what, when it parses it, what it looks like. So if I copy this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go over here. You can always hit inspect and open up this console and do things. So I'll just paste it in there. And the browser automatically parses it because it sees it. So it starts with a bracket. So it must be an array. And each array has an object in it. And there's 96 of these objects. Okay. And each object describes one animal.
Okay, so we have to put the list in the console first?
You don't have to. No, I was just showing you what it's doing. The code's doing it behind the scenes. You don't need to do what I just showed you.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense.
All right. I just wanted to show you what was going on.
Okay.
And let me move this data over to my space so that you can see it. I can walk you through it better. It's hard to know what JavaScript is doing without, dang it, lost it. Okay, let me get it back. Without seeing what's inside the variables. Does that make sense? So I'm going to show you a way to look inside those variables.
Oh, okay.
I just need to get the data over. Copy that. Paste. Okay. Now I moved it over to my server. All right. So now if I refresh this, where were we? We were here, right? Collapse all that stuff. Okay. I'm going to go and inspect here. Go to console. And here, I'm going to go to the network tab here. And see what happens. Okay. So it's saying it here, it's saying it can't find this data here. So maybe I didn't find it very well. Let me see. I thought I had it right here. Did it not save? Okay, now it's saved. Oh, I see. It's in a different folder. It's in this data. I changed it. So let me. I see. I put it in the wrong spot here. Let me. Sorry about this.
No problem. So, as you're doing that, so we're trying to import this data into JavaScript.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to do it in a way that I can show you.
Oh, okay.
All right, let me refresh this here, see if it works. Okay, now it worked. Okay, so now we go to the console now, or debugger it's called. And in the debugger, I can open up the file I'm on, which is, let's use the frame here. Let me actually bring this out. I think this is too many screens here. It's getting too many.
Sure.
Let's go down the console, go to debugger. So this allows you to bring up the code without the edit capability. So I have the same code here. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I can go in here now, click this line number. Actually, I can click this. Hit refresh, and then it will stop right there. And then I can, what was that?
So what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by it's going to stop right there? Like the code won't run?
Exactly. So basically, when the browser opens this file to run it, it reads it just like a English-speaking human being reads it from left to right, downwards. So it reads this first, then it reads this, and every time it reads a line, it does something over here to show the user. Does that make sense? So what I'm doing here is I'm telling it to read all the way up to here and then stop.
Okay.
And then I can go into the, yeah.
So basically when it stops, when it stops at fetch data, we haven't really put any text in yet, right? So like there's nothing that's going to be displayed on the browser yet.
Oh, I see. So let me step back from what I said. I added this type module here, and what this will do is it will not read this until it read all this. So it actually read all this and it actually put it in here and said, okay, I've done everything. Now I'm going to go back and then read in the module. That's why you see stuff here. So I read all these lines. And stuff. Okay, I didn't read it very well.
Okay.
All right, so now if I go to the console, I can actually write things in. Like I can put in the, what is it, the sort, no, I can put in main and see how it just outputs main. And then I can put in like sort inputs. If I do that, okay, it doesn't remember what those are. Okay, Chrome does a better job. Maybe this isn't the best tool. All right, okay, let me go back to debugger.
By the way, what does the 200 and on the left mean? When you were just looking at, I think it was like 200 in like a little box.
In here?
No, from the page. Yeah, that one.
So what this is saying is, let me go back to the debugger. When we did these fetch here, it's basically loading a file. So here it's basically saying, okay, I loaded the file, and then the server is getting the file from our server, and our server's name is happycalf75.boomspace. So it goes to the server, finds it, and then it grabs this file, and the server returns. And if it did its job, the server understood what the request was, it will give you a 200.
Oh, okay. So is 200 like a determined number already? Like it wouldn't be any other number?
Yeah, it's something that the server decides to send. When you get into the backend programming, you can actually tell the server to send different, what are called status codes based on different events.
Oh, okay.
So it's really telling you the health of the server. So it's green, so the server is healthy right now.
Oh,
But let's
okay.
say we shut down our server. Let's say our server wasn't connected to the website.
Mhm.
Then you would get like a different number. You wouldn't get 200, you would get like a 404. And that
Uh,
means the browser couldn't find the page. It doesn't, does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, the browser already predetermines the status code.
Uh, well, the browser understands these status codes.
Okay.
So this thing called HTTP here,
Uh-huh.
it's short for Hypertext Transfer Protocol.
Mhm.
And the people who invented HTTPS came up with a standard. And one of the standards was what kind of codes will the server and the browser both understand.
Okay.
So it's just, it's all human made up.
Okay.
Someone set these rules and other people implemented them, and we're just using them, kind of thing.
Okay.
Hope
So
that
they
makes
just
sense.
decided to go with 200 for whatever reason.
And there's different versions of HTTP. There's 2 and there's 3 and all that. So
Okay. So then, I mean, that makes sense. Now that it seemed kind of random at first.
okay.
But so what exactly is JSON, like JSON?
So I will show it to you. Do you know Python? Do you know what a dictionary in Python is?
Um,
No?
not really.
All right. So if
It's
I
like,
go to the console here and I write
uh-huh.
JSON here,
Mhm.
JSON is a way to put structured data. Do you know what a CSV file is?
Did you say it was a subcategory of HTML?
CSV? No, that's SVG. I'm talking about like, have you heard of CSV before?
I've heard of it. I'm just not exactly sure what it does.
Do you know what a spreadsheet is?
Yes.
So raw, it's all about structuring data. So if you, data by default is what's called unstructured. And that's like if you had like your journal and you're just randomly putting data in, right? But if you go
Mhm.
back and you look at your journal, it's really hard to know what you did maybe 3 weeks later, right?
Right. Right.
Unless you structure that data, meaning maybe you always put your date at the upper left-hand corner in your journal, and maybe you
Mhm.
always put like footnotes in the margin. You know, you can really do, if you really do a good job of writing your journals, you can make it easy to understand 3 months later by
Mhm.
putting certain information in different pieces of the page.
Mhm.
So in code, you can structure data too to make it easier for people and machines to understand what is going on.
Okay.
And JSON is just one of many, many formats out there to structure that data. So if I go here, so JSON is basically these brackets and curly braces. So a bracket means you have many things.
Mhm.
Curly braces mean you have a set of things that have names. So like African elephant have the name as a common name. So this thing is like what you call in Java a class. And the
Okay.
green and blue are like properties of the thing.
Okay.
So it's always, you have this a property colon and then some value, property colon and some value. This is just what JSON looks like.
Okay.
So it's easy to, you could probably look at this and I can ask you, okay, what is the conservation status of African wild dog? And you'll be able to go, oh, endangered, right?
Okay.
It's really, you don't even need to be, you need to tell you how this makes sense. It should just make sense, I hope,
Yeah,
how
it
it's
does.
structured. Okay. So it also makes sense to a computer. So if I
Mhm.
wanted to get, say this was in my JSON data, actually I have my thing here. Say I wanted to get this endangered. I can go over here, JSON gives me everything, and I want to get the second thing, this guy. to get to here, right?
Mm.
Well, 0 will give me the first thing, and 1 will give me the second thing. And then I can do dot conservation status, and I can get endangered.
Okay.
So by understanding the syntax, I can go and quickly find information in here. I can quickly, like, it's like an index, right? I can quickly just search it and find what I need.
Right.
Okay, hope that makes sense.
That does.
Okay, then, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting this data in a way that I can understand and the computer can understand.
Okay.
And I'm plopping that into this data variable. So now data has this.
Okay. So in line 247, are you storing, because like, is JSON like a keyword? Like, are you storing that as a constant variable?
Yeah, I am. So this is another way I can do this again. So it's a term, it's a name that I made up. And I could have just done this too. This might have been less confusing if I just did this. Didn't make up a new term. Just called it data.
Are we, okay, because like I thought maybe you had like let data as a variable. Are we like reusing that? Like, are we allowed to reuse it?
Yeah, because it's let. And the other cool thing is I defined it outside of the function. So when I define, whatever I define outside of the function, all the other functions inside the function will know what this means. So this is in Python and Java, same type of thing. It's called a global variable.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so then I get the data, and then my job now is to, using this data, basically render my thing. So if I hit play here, I get all my cards. So I need to map one object here to one card. So African wild dog, I'm going to put all this data and I'm going to put it inside of this HTML so that the browser then will draw it like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So really bind data, all it's doing is first of all, I'm just deleting whatever was in main because I'm going to replace it with those cards. And then I'm using for each. And for all 96 things, I'm going to call bind item. So I'm going to call bind item 96 times, once for each item.
Okay.
And then here's really where the magic is, I think. It's more, I'm basically transforming that JavaScript object into HTML. So I had this African elephant. It looks like this. I'm going to make it look like that. And all I do is say, well, here's my HTML. For the image source, I'm just going to get item.images. So whatever is in here, item.images, which would be this URL, would go in this image element. And then the browser sees, oh, that's an image element that has this URL. Then the browser will draw the image. And the same thing for H3, H4, and the links. I just inject them into the proper HTML tag. And here, I add it to my main element. So once I add it, what I created here, it will then appear here.
Okay. So by putting all of the HTML related tags under the bind item function, we're grouping them together.
Yeah, we're grouping them together all inside the main.
Okay. And then we were able, like, are we able to change the image, say, like, width and height in JavaScript, or is that only like done in the CSS?
No, you can do it in JavaScript or in HTML. You can actually change those things. So if I wanted to do in JavaScript, let's say I wanted to make here, I can change main, I can change the background color. So in HTML, I put style here, right?
Right.
To change to add CSS. So same thing in
Right.
JavaScript. I can just do .style. And then I can pick a style I want to change, like the background color. And I'll just make it red. So you can do the same thing with width and height. And because of that, you can then, I hit my breakpoint, so I'll run again. Because of that, I can do cool effects. I can do, every time I click a button, I can change the color and things like that, or I can change the width. I can change, programmatically, I can change a lot. And that's how a lot of games are done in the web.
Wow.
Just changing CSS styles in JavaScript. Okay. And we'll get into that with the data visualization workshop.
Oh, okay. That actually took me a moment to process, but
that
is cool. So then in data visualization, actually, could you explain data visualization really quick?
Sure. So we kind of did a basic data visualization here, where we took data that is, we can read, but we don't get a sense of things, right?
Right.
Because we have to look at it and read it. So, but if I wanted to know like the number of vulnerable animals, or let's say I wanted to know the number of cute animals that are vulnerable, right? Well, I don't see cuteness here at all. So I need to visualize cuteness. So I need to use HTML to show me what something looks like. So data visualization basically is taking your data, using JavaScript and HTML and CSS to visualize that data in a way that makes it look like something interesting. So to show you, I can go to vulnerable now and say, okay, oh, the dugong is really cute. There's one cute. Great, panda's cute. So I can look at these and maybe like, okay, maybe, oh wow, maybe half a panda is cute. And I can quickly, as a human being, understand what the data is telling me.
Right.
And then it's another thing like I don't know, the COVID stuff. I really like what COVID, the really popular one, the Johns Hopkins one, COVID map. I think I can just Google that. Like one of the most popular ones. They've made a data visualization that made the world look like it looks like it's sick because it has red dots everywhere on the map. And they grow, the more red dots a country has, the sicker it looks. So yeah, so you can see how US has tons of red dots. So it looks sicker than the rest of the world. So it's an art. Data visualization is an art. How do you create an emotional connection with people with data so you can make them understand and appreciate the things that you care about?
Oh, okay.
So it's very, very important. It shouldn't be a technical thing. It's a very artistic thing.
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
that makes. Thank you for explaining that. Like, I get it now.
You get it?
Really before. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So I think we have to wrap it up now, though. I think
yeah. So, Jiaming, do you have any other questions?
Well, not now. Thank you so much for going over the JavaScript code. I feel like I would still need to do a lot of reviewing on that, but just from what you said, it totally makes a lot more sense now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then don't try to understand it all at once. Take a piece that you do understand or you feel like you're comfortable with, and use those links in that document I gave out, read more about it, experiment, and try to grow from where you're comfortable with, and don't try to understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's my recommendation for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that advice. I am definitely going to keep that in mind because I feel like when I'm writing code, I'm just like really specific, like, okay, what does this do? But yeah, I'm